5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, Shagheads, Buzzheads, and Zoinkers. Curtis Tucker here, a.k.a. Shags, with another exciting episode of the Curtis Tucker Podcast. Thanks for joining in. Appreciate you guys. You guys can hit me up at curtistucker.com or shags@shaggyduck.com. Having a little trouble getting this podcast recorded tonight. Got people coming in and out of the studio, so this is my third attempt. We'll see if I can get it done without being interrupted. So going to give it a try. If you guys are listening to the podcast, don't forget that you can go to youtube.com/Curtis Tucker. See me waving at you from the palatial Shaggy Duck studio behind me. All the lights on. I got the window open. The weather in Oklahoma is perfect. It's the perfect night to be doing a podcast. And if you are watching me wave at you, don't forget that if you're driving, mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, that you can listen to the podcast on your favorite podcasting app, and please subscribe on both YouTube and your podcasting app. Then you will get notified every time I upload something new. As you noticed, I did not get an episode done last week. Part of that was because of all of the tornado stuff that I had going on. It was busy, it was hectic, and I did not have a podcasting episode idea. So rather than just doing something willy-nilly, I kept waiting, thinking something would come along, and then something came along, and then I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, and then the days kept going, and now all of a sudden we're here, and I'm like, okay, do I want to do that episode? Do I not want to do that episode? So I'm going to do that episode because of some things that happened today. So if you looked at the title of the episode, let me see, what did I decide to name it? Something to the effect of how I became a familiar face around town. And that's not to say that is different than saying I'm famous or a celebrity, because I'm not. I just have a familiar face in Enid, Oklahoma. And anyway, so last week when I was trying to decide what to do for my episode, I couldn't think of anything. I'd been asking my Scooby AI to give me some ideas. He was giving me some pretty decent ideas, but nothing that I just wanted to jump on. So one morning while I was out on the trail doing my morning video, I asked and said, hey, you guys give me an idea for a podcast episode. And somebody did, and they said, talk about how you became a familiar person in town. And so that is what tonight's episode is about. Now, I almost didn't do it because I was going to just start it last week, and I kept thinking, no, that's kind of a weird, lame episode. But then after what happened today, I thought, okay, somebody's telling me that's a decent podcasting episode, so go ahead and do it. So what happened today was I had bought something on Amazon and I needed to return it. And then while I got online, I discovered that the easiest way to return stuff is you can just drop it by the Staples store, which our Staples is never busy. So I knew I could get right in, drop it off rather than going to UPS. So I ran it by Staples. Lady that I didn't know comes up smiling, says, "Aren't you Curtis Tucker?" And I said, well, yes, I am. She goes, I see your videos. I thought that was you. I wasn't sure until I heard your voice. And so we talked, and it was nice getting to, hear from her. And so I left there. And then later in the afternoon, I had to call the Culligan guys come out, because of all my, well, you probably don't. If you had listened to the Buzzhead Radio episode, we've been having some water in the vents, got all that figured out. And then we had some stuff going on with our Culligan system. So I called the Culligan guy to come out. Well, one of their guys came out, and while he was under my sink trying to fix a faucet that we have, he looked up and he said, "You're Curtis Tucker, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said that he watches my videos. So that was two people today. And then we went out to eat tonight. We went to Hideaway Pizza. Denise saw one of her patients from her dental hygiene, so she went over and talked to him. About 10 minutes later, he came over to our table to introduce himself to me because he watches my videos and had seen my tornado video. And so we talked about tornadoes and weather and all that. But anyway, so that was 3 people. Normally, I don't get 3 people that say that they recognize me all in one day. So I thought that was a pretty good indication or pretty good universe fact that the universe is telling me to do the episode. So I thought, well, let's do the episode of how did me, this average, everyday guy, become a well-known face in Enid, Oklahoma. And I've got this really cool story of how I went from working for somebody to being an entrepreneur to what I'm doing today. But I don't want to get into that whole story. That's usually the speech that I give when I'm asked to speak somewhere. So I'm going to kind of squeeze it down into just the Enid Buzz part for this episode. And then I may do another episode later on, because I don't know that I've ever done a podcasting episode for the Curtis Tucker podcast where I explain how I got to where I am. But this will be part of that explanation. So basically, in the early 2000s, I had quit my job, and my new job was building websites and blogs and putting advertising on them to make money. So I got a crazy idea in my head that it would be pretty cool to build 100 websites and blogs and have advertising on them and affiliate links and all that and make money with those. And so that's what I did. I set out and I was building 100 websites and blogs. Well, to build that many, you start to run out of ideas. So you got to come up with some ideas. So I thought, well, why don't I do a blog about Enid, Oklahoma, and I'll talk about all my fun memories of growing up in the 70s and 80s and the restaurants I remember and the stores and the things around town, and any old pictures of Enid, Oklahoma I can dig up, I'll put on that blog. And so it was a website. And so in 2005, I bought enidbuzz.com, built a website. It was a personal blog of just me talking about my memories of growing up in Enid, but I added some stuff to it, like a little directory, because I thought, well, every website that I built, I kind of had some type of a directory on it. So I thought, well, let me add a directory to it that'll have like links to the city, to the police, to the symphony, to the Y, to some churches, to the sports complex, just a whole bunch of different links. So people would have a one-stop website where they could get links to everything in town. But the main point of the website was to blog about Enid, Oklahoma. And so I didn't update it much because I had 99 other websites and blogs that I had to keep running. So it was just one of the 100 that I had, and it was just more of a personal thing. So, and then in 2005, in that day, people weren't really uploading video, and there was no live streaming, and there was no social media. It was all website, and you wanted to keep your website loading really fast. So it was all just stories, typed out, and then old pictures of Enid. There was nothing to indicate that I was the one. I didn't have like a page that said about me and said, hey, I'm Curtis Tucker, I'm doing Enid Buzz. I didn't have that. But anyway, so that went along, and I did that whole business for 10 years, where I was building the 100 websites, keeping them updated, making money with advertising. The whole point of that business was to keep the websites ranked high in the Google search engine. And then that way, when somebody searched for one of the keywords in one of my 100 websites, it would come up at the top, and then people would come to the website, click on the advertising, and I would make money. And then all of that collapsed in 2012 due to a major change in the Google algorithm, which was called the Panda update. And you can Google that and find out about that. But anyway, so basically in March of 2012, I was pretty much unemployed. My whole 10-year business collapsed overnight. Then, one day I was making money, same amount of money almost every day. I had high rankings, in most of my websites. Had clients contacting me because of my cartoon websites, was doing a lot of cartoon logos. Everything was running smoothly. I thought that was going to be what I was going to do till the end of my days. It was going to be my retirement. It was everything. Wake up the next day, there's no traffic, there's no money in my account. My AdSense says I'm getting no traffic. I think there's just a glitch in the AdSense. I wait a couple hours. It doesn't get better. I start searching for my websites. They're nowhere to be found in the Google rankings. None of them. All 100 of them gone. Started searching, asking the guys that, we would get together and figure out the Google algorithm together, and started asking them. And that's when we all started hearing these rumors about this new Panda update. Well, the Panda update had basically purged the Google search engine of thin content websites and started giving more emphasis to huge websites like Wikipedia and Walmart, just huge websites. So anybody that didn't have a website with like 20,000 pages and and notoriety, they just weren't ranking anymore. So basically, I spent the better part of a year trying to figure it out and couldn't figure out the algorithm. And I got to the point where I needed money. So I had to decide, am I going to quit the whole internet thing and go get another job after 10 years, or sorry about that, I need a cough button. Or am I going to start a different business? So I took a chance and decided that out of everything that I was doing, Enid Buzz was the one thing that I was doing that I could do locally and didn't have to rely on the Google search rankings to get people to go to it. So I rebuilt the Enid Buzz website and added a bunch more stuff to it. And then luckily, social media had come along. Facebook pages had just come out. So I started an Enid Buzz Facebook page. And that was what really took off. And the day that I decided to start doing Enid Buzz as my full-time business, I started posting every 30 minutes because I decided to treat my Facebook page as a news feed. Like, it was just going to be a constant feed of news and happenings and press releases and events and everything. Whereas, everybody else would post like once a day or once a week, what's their daily special, or, well, I was treating it completely different. And if you notice on Facebook pages for television stations, that's what they do today. So I was doing that in 2013 before a lot of the TV stations and newspapers and people were doing that. It was just an idea that I had that I thought, well, that's one way of making a constant feed of news. And so many people were on Facebook. I put two and two together, and that's what I made. And of course, there were some people that they weren't used to that. And they were like, well, I don't know if I want to, continue to follow your page because you post too much. And I was like, well, then, sorry, but that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, but in those days, 2013, 14, 15, it was still a little bit before people were really uploading video. There was no live streaming. Live streaming hadn't really come along yet. And so for the first several years of Enid Buzz, nobody knew who was behind it. They knew what it was because it was out there everywhere and everybody was talking about it and liking it and sharing it and all that good stuff. But the speculation for some weird reason was that a woman was running it, because I knew my audience was more female than male. So I made a lot of my content shopping and food and events for kids. And so they kind of assumed that. And then some people assumed that it was the newspaper doing another Facebook page. And then some people thought it was a branch of the city of Enid. And so really nobody knew who or what Enid Buzz was. They just knew that it was this new entity that was providing lots of news, lots of information. And then Vine and some of that other stuff had been taking off, and YouTube and video started getting a lot more popular. It was a lot more easy to upload video. You could shrink the video, you could get them up. So I started doing more videos for Enid Buzz. And basically what that was is if I would go interview somebody, like there might have been a story in town, I would go interview somebody. Well, that put me on camera with them. And a lot of times I would start, and so that kind of made me different than the newspaper, the radio stations, the competing Facebook pages at the time. So basically what I became fairly quickly was kind of Enid's version of a TV station, because we didn't have a TV station. And so, at one point, Todd and I started a weekly video show where we would go to a coffee shop and we would bring people in and interview them while the coffee shop was going on, and you could hear clinking cups and everything. But so he and I, and again, my face was on the screen at least once every week with that show. And so I continued to do more video. People started to realize they started recognizing my face. That's the guy that does Enid Buzz. And then live streaming came along, and I was the first in Enid to do live streaming as far as for my business. And so I would go to an event and I would usually start out with, "Hey, Curtis Tucker here." Or no, I think usually I would say, "Hey, everybody, Enid Buzz, at this event." And then, so my face became even more recognizable. So then after a couple of years of that, I couldn't really, I would go places and people would say, "Hey, aren't you that Buzz guy?" Or "Aren't you Enid Buzz?" And so that was where, people really became familiar with who I was, just because more videos, more live streams. And, so I really, almost on a weekly basis, I would go somewhere and somebody be looking at me like, "I know you from somewhere." And I'd say Enid Buzz, and they'd say, "Yeah, that's it." So, I just became associated with Enid Buzz, with my face, and familiar. And because I was doing maybe a video or a live stream at least like every other day, I was just really recognizable. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided that I didn't like doing vertical video. Everything I did was horizontal. I didn't like vertical video. I didn't understand really what reels were, and I didn't understand really what people were using stories for. And I wasn't doing TikTok. So a year and a half ago, I decided, you know what? And that before all that, though, real quick, I was going out every morning on the trail, and I would take a picture of the sunrise, and I would post that on Enid Buzz with the day's weather and the holidays for that day and all that. So people started getting used to me taking morning photos of the sunrise. Well, that was basically just a photo of the sunrise. Well, then a year and a half ago, I decided I'm going to force myself to learn about vertical video, why people are using Reels, Stories, and TikTok. And so every morning, along with taking a picture of a sunrise, I started doing a 1-minute video where 30 seconds of the video, I would say, "Hey, everybody, Curtis Tucker here with Enid Buzz." Tell them what was going on with the day or what weather was going on. And then for the last 30 seconds, okay, interruption number 4. Now my timing's all off. This is the 4th time I've tried to do the podcast. So I'm just going to continue on from where I was. I'm not exactly sure where. So I think I was talking about learning vertical video, Reels, Stories, TikTok. So I do 30 seconds of me talking, and then 30 seconds I would film the sunrise, and I would put those two videos together for a 1-minute video, put a song in the background, and I would upload that to TikTok. And from so I would upload it on TikTok, and that's where I would add the music, and then I would add captions. Then I would take that video and I would upload it to Facebook, and then I would upload it to Instagram, and then I would upload it to Twitter. And so basically every morning for almost 500 days now, and I rarely missed. I mean, even some days when there was no sunrise, I still do a video. If I'm out of town on vacation, I would still do a video. So there were not very many mornings that I missed. And so, and then so it would be on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but then on Facebook and Instagram, I would also upload it to stories, and then Facebook automatically sent, because it was video, sent it to Reels. So for a year and a half, every morning it's, hey, Buzzheads, Curtis Tucker here. That has really catapulted me into familiarity. So now, instead of people stopping me and saying, hey, aren't you that Buzz guy? Or, hey, aren't you Enid Buzz? Now they say, are you Curtis Tucker? And then the other day, even though I wasn't really on camera, but when I did the video of the tornado, it just added a little more umph that, hey, there's Curtis Tucker out there filming the tornado. So really that is where I became a familiar face in town. So it's not that I'm a celebrity or famous. It's just people recognize me and basically mostly from the Facebook page, probably a little bit from Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, but mostly from the Facebook page. And then also, I've got YouTube videos for Enid Buzz that I upload as well. Plus, I also do, when I do the morning videos, I do actually 2 1-minute videos. One of the videos is for Enid Buzz, which gives Enid information and weather and stuff. And then the other video is a whole different version of me talking, and that's talking about our podcast or curtistucker.com, or asking questions of baby boomers and Generation X and all that stuff. So basically between the two, and now I've got like 60,000 followers on the Enid Buzz Facebook page, and all of my posts on the Enid Buzz Facebook page reach about 4 million, or it gets about 4 million views a month. So I'm out there a lot. And so basically that is where all of that grew. Wasn't something I planned, wasn't something I did on purpose, wasn't something I wanted. It's just something that has happened. And so like today, the 3 different people that recognize me, literally all from the videos that I post. I have had, which is a little weird. I've had people come up to me and ask to take selfies. It's not like people ask for my autograph, which is, A-okay, but it's just, they just want to, say, hey, I met the guy that's always on the Facebook deal. So that's kind of, if I can do it, if you guys are looking to, become well known or improve your brand out there, it literally can happen. And basically the reason it works for me is consistency, because I do it every day, all the time, had a plan, did the plan. I still do it today. I still do the morning videos, the 2 different versions for me and for Enid Buzz. And so it has really grown, the number of people that know who I am. So I've got some notes here that Scooby AI had talked about on this episode. Yeah, it is one of the, and so I'm going to read some of this off. I know I'm super rambling tonight. I just wanted to get an episode in. Didn't want to miss another one. It is a little bit awkward sometimes because I literally, walk around not thinking anybody knows me when, there are a lot of people that recognize me. They don't know me. And I guess that's the weird part is And you kind of get this when you run into like a sports figure or somebody that you see on TV all the time. You feel like you know them, or even like a local radio person or a person on your local news station. You feel like you know them, and you can just walk up and start talking to them. And most people, are friendly and talk back, but you've got to remember that they don't know you. And so sometimes that's a little weird, is like, I've got to remember that they're seeing me every day, saying all this stuff. So, not that it's weird, not that I mind it. I definitely am not saying don't come talk to me or say anything. Yeah, and so basically, because so many people know who I am, and the Jeep that I drive and everything, I have to be pretty careful of the things I do and say, and the way that I act out there, because if I do something super weird or bad, it's going to be pointed out, and it's going to be all over the social media. So I kind of have to mind my P's and Q's when it comes to that type of stuff. There might be some political thing or some, something out there that I might want to comment on or do that I don't do because people recognize me. I mean, I usually don't put signs in my yard for candidates because I don't want the people that vote for the other candidate to not think I don't like, I don't want to divide my audience and all that. So just because people know who I am, it might influence whether they want to continue watching my videos or Enid Buzz if they feel like I'm not on their side. So I try not to pick sides on anything, which is really, really tough sometimes. What else? Yeah, so the internet is basically what made me recognizable. Wasn't the website, wasn't anything else that I did. It's just basically the repetition of being on those videos every morning. I mean, it is, and then people think I know a lot more than I do because they just assume that because I do Enid Buzz, I've got connections to all the secrets going on in town. So, here's some of the questions I get. If there's a helicopter flying over town, or a plane, especially if like a big bomber that we don't normally have flies in advance, I'll get lit up with questions. What's that plane? Why is that plane here? They'll ask me when a store is, opens or closes. What time does Walmart open or close? This is stuff that you can Google, but people would rather reach out and ask me. And so I happily answer them. If there's police anywhere in town with yellow tape or sirens on, I'm always asked what's going on. Why are the police there? Most of the time, probably 99% of the time, I have no idea because the police don't tell. Even after they maybe only 20% of the time send out a press release of what actually happened. So basically, unless I listen to the scanner, I don't know what's going on, but people assume that I do. They ask when the power goes out. They ask me why the power went out, how long it's going to be out. Well, the thing there is I know the website to go to for OG&E, and it'll tell me how many houses in Enid don't have power and what the estimated time is. And as soon as power goes out, I go look at that, and that way I can relay that information. So I think people just assume that I know that information off the top of my head, but I actually have to go find it. They ask if there's somebody, like if there was an abandoned building and somebody's working on it, they assume I know what business is going in there. Now, maybe 40% of the time I do know the business going in somewhere, but 60% of the time I do not know. And sometimes I do know and I can't tell because some people tell me and they don't want anybody to know until they're ready to tell. So I can't tell sometimes. They ask me around Christmas time, I always get asked, where's Santa? Because people miss all the different public places Santa's going to be, and they wait until all of those dates are gone, and then they ask me, "Hey, where's Santa going to be?" If there's an earthquake, I get a lot of people coming to Enid Buzz saying, "Was that an earthquake?" If it snows, everybody wants to know from me whether there's going to be school the next day. And of course, I don't know until the school announces that. And they usually don't announce that until the morning of the day of school. They'll announce it like at 6 in the morning. And so those are just basically the type of questions that I get all of the time. And again, I don't mind. I love answering them. Eventually, I do find out the answers, and that makes it a lot easier to tell everybody what's going on. Let's see, what other stuff is it suggesting here? Just, and then basically it being Enid, it's 50,000 people. So they're, again, we live in a market without a TV station. The Tulsa stations and the Oklahoma City stations do not concentrate on Enid very much at all. Now, they all came up here to film for the tornado, but other than a big event like that, nobody really covers what's going on in Enid. The newspaper, they don't really have a person like me. They do some social media, but it's all related to the stories in their printed newspaper. And so they try to drive people from social media to the printed or the online version of the newspaper. They don't really go out and do interviews and lives with it like a reporter like I do. The radio stations, they have DJs, but DJs are not recognizable because they're behind the microphone. Now they'll go out and they'll do live remotes for businesses, but a lot of times, unless they've been doing that for years and years and years, people just won't, because they don't know what the people look like, they won't know who it is. So basically, I think I have kind of become the television anchor for Enid, and that, if you know your local TV anchors, they're very recognizable. So if you go shopping or you go to a restaurant and you see one of them, you're like, oh, I know who that is. And that's basically kind of what has happened to me. And again, not by choice, not that I, anything against it. That's just how it has come. I think that is about it. So basically, that's how the whole thing kind of got started. Wasn't anything that I set out to do. I don't have a journalism degree. I don't, I've thought about maybe kind of turning Enid Buzz into more of a television news station, but I kind of like it the way that it's cruising right now, where most of it is still driven by social media and the website. And then I just throw in, some lives and some video here and there. I probably ought to add a little more video content, but again, though, just doing those simple, and if you look at them, if you look at my morning videos for the sunrise, they don't have huge numbers. The ones that I do for myself are in the hundreds, like 100, 200, 300 views. The ones for Enid Buzz might be 600, 700, 800 views. And then maybe on Instagram might be a little over 1,000, but it's not like my videos are getting like tens of thousands of views. None of them are. I mean, I rarely have any go over 1,500 views, but I think it's like the consistency is out of, let's say, 800 people are seeing it. Each day it might be a different 800. It's not like only 800 people are seeing my videos every morning. I do it so consistently that on some days, one group of, maybe depending on the keyword that I use, it shows up for different people. But eventually, I think I've been doing it so long, all of those morning videos have shown up on everybody in town's feed at least one time or another. So that's basically the podcast episode. That is how I became well known around Enid. And like I say, Todd and I did that show. It was called E-Talk, where we interviewed people. I've done a couple of podcasts, Enid Buzz podcasts, where I have had guests and invite people on. So I've done, a lot of video and interviews, which has helped out. And so anyway, I'm just going to keep cruising along as long as I can and kind of see where it all leads to. I got to kind of, I'm almost to the point where I've got to decide to keep it small and where it's at, or, do I want to grow it? Well, I'm getting close to retirement age, not meaning that I'm going to retire, but meaning, do I really want to take on even more work and responsibility by building this into more of a news video type information source rather than just blog and social media? So I don't know. I'll decide all that later. But anyway, you guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you see my morning sunrise videos. Hit me up at Curtis at curtistucker.com or Shags at shaggyduck.com. I will have this podcast episode on all your podcasting apps. I'll have the video on YouTube, and then I embed the podcast episode and the YouTube video on a page on curtistucker.com, where I also have the written word, and that's all typed out in kind of blog format. So you can get all that on one page at curtistucker.com. I super appreciate all of you guys for checking in. Let me know if you have any show ideas. I love that show idea. I'm not sure I did it very well. I feel like I was rambling. I got interrupted 4 times and had to stop and start and stop and start. And I was just basically trying to get it over with here towards the end. But anyway, love you guys. I will talk to you soon. See ya.